The chandelier's glow shimmered across the long oak table as the Carver family gathered for what was supposed to be a warm, elegant family dinner in Cedar Falls. Laughter filled the room, glasses clinked, and the air smelled of roasted rosemary and comfort until Grant Carver stood, tapping his glass for attention. With his perfect smile and polished confidence, he said 6 words that froze every fork in midair. "I'd like you all to meet someone very special." From the doorway stepped Ariel Monroe, glowing in a fitted ivory dress, her hands gently resting on a pregnant belly. For a moment, time stopped. Rebecca Carver, his wife, sat at the head of the table, her expression calm, almost serene, while beneath that stillness, a storm quietly gathered. They thought she'd break that night. But what no one at that table knew was that Rebecca had come prepared, and before the night was over, she would pull out papers that would end Grant's carefully constructed life forever. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The chandelier's glow shimmered like liquid gold over the long oak table as voices and laughter filled the grand dining room of the Carver family estate in Cedar Falls. It looked like the perfect family gathering. Crystal glasses clinked, the air rich with roasted lamb and rosemary, and polished silver caught the light like small suns. But under that warm glow, something tense and electric waited to break. Grant Carver, the man of the house, stood tall at the table's center. In his mid-30s, handsome and polished, he wore confidence like armor. To the world, he was a man of influence, a self-made real estate executive known for his charm and unshakable marriage. Yet behind that smile lay a man carrying secrets. At the head of the table sat Rebecca Carver, his wife, a quieter, thoughtful, devoted woman with soft eyes and gentle manners. Her calmness often made people overlook her strength, but tonight, that silence carried weight. She had planned this dinner weeks ago, hoping to repair the distance she'd felt his late nights, his unexplained absences, his sudden bursts of temper masked by charm. Around them sat Harold Carver, Grant's father, a proud patriarch guarding the Carver legacy. Martha, Grant's mother, known for her controlling warmth, and several cousins from the family's real estate branch. Even Delia, the longtime housemaid, lingered at the edge, her eyes flicking nervously from Rebecca to Grant. "Beautiful evening," Harold said, forcing cheer. "It's good to see family come together again." Grant smiled, lifting his glass. "To family," he echoed. The toast sounded hollow, like something rehearsed. Rebecca met his gaze. "To honesty," she added softly. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the chatter like a blade. Grant's smile tightened. A waiter, young, jittery, new, approached with a tray of red wine. As he leaned in, a glass slipped, spilling crimson across Grant's sleeve. The sound of shattering glass silenced the room. Grant's jaw flexed. He forced a laugh, but his eyes burned. "Careful," he muttered through clenched teeth. Rebecca's hand brushed his arm, calming, steady. "It's just wine," she said, her tone gentle, but her eyes didn't leave his. Inside, she felt a strange chill. Something about his anger felt different, too deep, too ready. Martha broke the tension. "Accidents happen. Let's enjoy the meal, yes?" Conversation resumed, but the energy had shifted. Rebecca noticed Grant's nervous glances toward the doorway, the way he checked his watch twice. She caught a small, folded note half hidden beside his plate. Her teacher's eyes were trained to read even the smallest clues. He leaned toward her suddenly, voice low, polite smile fixed. "You'll be surprised who's joining us tonight." Rebecca blinked. "Who?" He straightened, his grin spreading like a mask. "Someone very special." In that moment, Rebecca didn't yet know that her husband's special guest would shatter everything she believed about love, loyalty, and legacy. The camera lingered on her face as she looked toward the tall double doors at the end of the hall. The laughter around her blurred into a hum, and the chandelier's glow seemed to flicker. Something or someone was coming. Rebecca's hand brushed the small envelope hidden inside her purse, the one she had sealed that morning without telling anyone. Whatever happened tonight, she was ready. The heavy oak doors swung open with a deep, echoing creak. Every head at the long oak table turned. For a heartbeat, Even the chandelier's glow seemed to pause mid-flicker. The air, once filled with laughter and chatter, fell into stunned silence. Standing in the doorway was a young woman none of them had seen before, Ariel Monroe. Early 30s, glowing skin, confident eyes, and a gentle hand resting on a pregnant belly under a sleek, fitted dress the color of ivory. Her smile was delicate, but it carried something bold, almost rehearsed. Grant's voice cut through the quiet. "Everyone," he said with an easy grin. "This is Ariel. Someone very special to me." The words landed like thunder. Gasps, murmurs, shock, confusion, disbelief. Rebecca's fork slipped from her hand and clattered against her plate. The sound was small but sharp enough to echo in the vast room. Her pulse raced, but her face stayed calm, nervous but composed. She looked at her husband, her voice soft yet steady. "Special how, Grant?" He hesitated for a second, then placed a proud hand on Ariel's shoulder. "She's expecting," he said, smiling wider. "And I'll be a father again." The words shattered the illusion of peace like glass underfoot. Harold Carver, Grant's father, slammed his palm on the table, silverware rattling. "Are you out of your mind?" he barked. His old, proud eyes flamed with fury. Martha, the mother, looked between her son and Rebecca, torn between fear and embarrassment. "Grant, what are you saying?" Grant's calm tone held arrogance. "I'm saying what everyone deserves to know. This dinner isn't about Rebecca, it's about our family's future." The image of a perfect husband was breaking before their eyes. Rebecca's voice came soft and trembling, but her words cut clean. "So this," she said, nodding toward Ariel's stomach, "is the new future?" Ariel lowered her gaze but didn't speak. Her silence wasn't shame, it was part of the performance. Grant straightened, his smile tight. "Rebecca, let's not make this dramatic. We've both grown apart. Ariel understands me. She's different." Rebecca's throat tightened, but her eyes, steady, alert, studied his every word. Beneath the shock, something in her heart clicked. The cracks were already forming long before tonight. Harold rose from his seat. "You are disgracing this family, Grant. The Carver legacy means honor, not scandal." Grant laughed coldly. "Legacy? You've built it on silence, not truth." In that moment, the Carver name, once wrapped in respect, began to unravel. And Rebecca understood that this wasn't just betrayal. It was war, fought behind polished smiles. Rebecca's hands trembled under the table, yet her expression didn't betray the storm inside. Her stillness was strength. She turned to the maid, Delia, and whispered, "Please bring me my bag." Everyone's attention stayed on Grant and Ariel, who now sat side by side, hands intertwined like a couple proud of their sin. As Delia disappeared down the hall, Rebecca exhaled slowly. She glanced at the flickering chandelier and then at her husband, whose smile had grown too confident. Her mind whispered a single promise. He thinks he's rewriting the story tonight, but soon he'll learn every lie leaves a paper trail. Rebecca's eyes fell on the chandelier's reflection in the wineglass, warped, doubled, fragile. The cracks that began tonight would only widen when light finally hit the truth. The dining room trembled with tension. Voices rose, chairs scraped, and the once warm family gathering turned into a battlefield of whispers and disbelief. The Carver family name, long tied to pride and respect in Cedar Falls, hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Harold Carver stood first, his old hands shaking but his voice firm. "You've humiliated your wife and this family, Grant. The Carver legacy was built on honor, not spectacle." Grant's jaw tightened. His polished smile had cracked, revealing a glimmer of arrogance beneath. "Honor?" he repeated. "You mean silence. You built this family by pretending nothing ever happens behind closed doors." The chandelier's glow threw harsh light over his face, making him look less like the charming man of influence everyone admired, and more like someone rotten beneath the surface. Across the table, Ariel Monroe, his pregnant companion, sat perfectly still. Her delicate hand rested on her stomach, as though protecting her unborn child, but her eyes darted nervously toward Grant. Beneath the elegance of her fitted dress, there was unease, a subtle reminder that she wasn't just an outsider, she was part of the storm he had created. Rebecca remained seated, her fingers gently tracing the rim of her glass. She looked calm, but inside, her heart pounded against the walls of her chest. Her world was collapsing, yet her stillness was strength. She whispered softly, mostly to herself, "You didn't even hesitate." Grant heard her and gave a mocking laugh. Hesitate. Rebecca, you've always been too emotional. Ariel understands business, ambition, drive. She doesn't drag me down. Dead weight. The words drop like poison. Rebecca's eyes flicked to him, then away, her voice calm but low. Ambition isn't love, Grant. It's loneliness dressed in confidence. It was the first crack in the polished mask of a man who thought he could build an empire on deception, greed, and betrayal. Martha, trying to hold the pieces together, whispered, "Enough, please. Let's not destroy everything in one night." But it was already too late. Grant rose from his chair, placing his hand firmly on Ariel's shoulder. "What's done is done. The future is hers and mine." Harold stared at his son with something heavier than anger disappointment. "You're throwing away everything your grandfather built." Grant leaned closer, his tone sharp. "No, father. I'm rebuilding it my way." Silence swallowed the room. Even the waiter froze at the edge of the hall, unsure if he should move. Then, suddenly, Rebecca stood. Her voice was soft but carried through the silence like a blade. "Then build, Grant. Build whatever future you want. Just remember, every structure built on lies eventually collapses." Grant smiled faintly, thinking it was a threat born of pain. But behind her words hid a plan, one written not in anger, but in patience, precision, and strategy. The chandelier's glow dimmed as the storm gathered outside. A cold breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the smell of rain like warning. Rebecca turned toward the hallway where her study waited. Her thoughts whispered to the future. If he wanted a new foundation, she would make sure it crumbled the moment he tried to stand on it. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from, and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. The Carver family dinner was over, but its poison lingered in the air. Rebecca Carver stood alone in the dining hall, staring at the long oak table, now littered with half-eaten food and broken glass. The chandelier's glow flickered weakly above her, its light trembling just like her hands. For a moment, she wanted to scream, to break every plate, to tear down every illusion that had once felt like love. But she didn't. Instead, she inhaled slowly and straightened her back. Her stillness was strength. Delia, the housemaid, entered quietly, a loyal woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and the gentle grace of someone who had served the Carvers for decades. She whispered, "Ma'am, are you all right?" Rebecca turned to her. "No, Delia, but I will be." Her tone was calm, almost detached. The camera followed Rebecca as she walked down the long hallway, her heels clicking like metronomes counting down to something inevitable. The golden walls of the house seemed colder tonight, as if they, too, knew the truth. She entered her study, her sanctuary. The chandelier's glow here was softer, the air still. The room smelled faintly of old books and cedar polish. On the desk lay a locked drawer. Rebecca knelt, opened it slowly, and pulled out a box filled with collected documents, bank statements, real estate ledgers, and recorded meeting times she had kept hidden for months. This wasn't new. She had sensed his distance, noticed late nights and unexplained absences, and followed the trail like a quiet detective. A flashback rolled in. Rebecca in her classroom weeks ago, grading papers when a message from Grant popped up, working late again. But behind that message, the faint reflection of another woman in the office window, Ariel laughing beside him. Back to the present, Rebecca pressed her trembling hands over the papers. "You think you fooled me," she whispered. "But every lie leaves a footprint." Evelyn Pierce, her friend and accountant, appeared in the doorway. A sharp, intuitive woman in her early 40s, Evelyn had helped Rebecca track the secrets hidden in ledgers. She said softly, "You don't have to do this alone." Rebecca looked up, her eyes steady. "I'm not. I have the truth and that's enough." Evelyn approached the desk. "These records, they're serious, Rebecca. If what you suspect is real, it's not just cheating, it's fraud." Rebecca nodded. "Then it's time someone saw who he really is, a man of influence who built an empire on deception and greed." Outside, Thunder cracked across Cedar Falls. The wind pressed hard against the windows, shaking them like warnings. Rebecca stood by the glass, looking out at the storm. "He thinks I'll stay quiet," she murmured. "But silence has its own kind of power." Evelyn frowned. "What are you planning?" Rebecca turned back slowly, her reflection splitting across the window pane. "I'm planning to let him think he's safe," she said, "until he's not." She placed a sealed envelope back into the drawer. Its label read simply, "When the time is right." And that time was closer than anyone knew. The boardroom lights glared like interrogation lamps, bright and cold. Grant Carver stood at the head of the long glass table inside Carver Realty, his reflection slicing across its surface like two versions of himself, one smiling, one hollow. Around him sat men in suits, Leo Graves, Terry Malone, and Mayor Judith Lang, his chosen allies in his growing web of deception, greed, and betrayal. "Gentlemen," Grant began, his voice firm, "the Cedar Ridge project is the future of the Carver legacy. Once we move these properties through the shell companies, the profits will triple." Leo Graves, a stocky man with sharp eyes and a reputation for cutting corners, leaned forward. "And your wife Rebecca, she won't question the transfers?" Grant smirked. "Rebecca is sentimental, not strategic. She teaches kids. She believes I'm still the image of a perfect husband." Across the table, Terry Malone, the company's quiet bookkeeper, adjusted his glasses nervously. He was a man who had seen too much, kept too many secrets in ledgers that were meant to stay hidden. "Mr. Carver," he said carefully, "the accounts overseas. They're already under review by investors. If they notice the adjustments—" Grant cut him off, voice sharp. "Then adjust harder, Terry. This empire doesn't run on hesitation, it runs on loyalty." Mayor Judith Lang, sitting gracefully in her tailored gray suit, folded her hands. "You're playing with fire, Grant. These properties belong to public trusts. Move them wrong, and it's fraudulent real estate transfers." Grant smiled coldly. "Only if someone finds out." The camera panned across his reflection on the glass. Perfect posture, perfect smile, but behind it, the mask of success was beginning to slip. As he signed the contracts, Leo's phone buzzed with a notification. He looked at the message, then at Grant. "You might want to see this." Grant frowned, taking the phone. A photo filled the screen. Ariel Monroe, his pregnant lover, stepping out of a clinic with another man's arm around her for support. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Who took this?" Leo shrugged. "Someone from the press, maybe. They say she's been seen talking to a lawyer." Grant's pen froze in his hand. For the first time that night, a flicker of fear replaced confidence. He built his empire on polished glass, never realizing it reflected everything he tried to hide. He slammed the phone down, forcing a smirk to cover the tremor in his voice. "She's just securing things for us. Don't read into it." But even he didn't believe it. As the meeting ended, Terry Malone lingered, picking up one of the signed pages. In small print, he noticed something strange. One account number didn't match the others. A single misplaced digit. To most, it was nothing. To him, it screamed danger. Later, as Grant walked to his car, the night in Cedar Falls felt heavier than usual. The streetlights flickered like nervous eyes watching him. He didn't know that Henry Miles, a private investigator, sat parked across the street, camera in hand, quietly documenting every step he took. Henry's camera clicked one last time as lightning flashed across the sky. Every empire leaves a paper trail, and Rebecca was already following it. Rain hammered against the cafe windows like impatient fingers. Inside, the smell of coffee mingled with the tension in the air. Rebecca Carver sat at a corner table, her coat still damp from the storm outside. Across from her sat Dr. Samuel Price, a sharp-eyed attorney in his late 30s, calm, steady, and known across Cedar Falls for defending people everyone else had given up on. He placed his leather briefcase on the table, eyes narrowing as he opened the folders she had handed him. Inside were bank statements, real estate ledgers, and recorded meeting times, evidence of something larger than betrayal. "Rebecca," he said slowly, flipping through the papers, "this isn't just infidelity. What you have here points to financial fraud and embezzlement. If you push this, Grant could lose everything: his firm, his assets, his reputation." Rebecca's fingers tightened around her cup. "Good," she said softly, "because he already took everything from me." The line hit like a quiet explosion. In that small cafe, a Woman began rewriting her story not with rage, but with reason, patience, and strategy. Samuel studied her face. You've been tracking this for months, haven't you? Rebecca nodded, her expression calm. Since the first night he lied about a business trip. I noticed the inconsistencies, the extra accounts, the sudden transfers. He built a polished empire on lies. Samuel leaned forward. Did anyone else help you gather this? Evelyn Pierce, she said. She verified the data. And Henry Miles, a private investigator, captured photos of his late-night meetings. Samuel's brow furrowed. You're methodical, but you need to be careful. Grant's a man of influence. He knows people in high places. One wrong move, and he'll bury the evidence before you can use it. Rebecca's calm voice didn't waver. That's why I haven't moved yet. I want him to think I'm broken, not watching. The lawyer paused, impressed. So what's your plan? She opened her bag and placed 2 envelopes on the table, one white, one gold. The white one holds proof of his fraudulent real estate transfers. The gold one holds something personal, something that will finish him. Samuel raised an eyebrow. What's inside the gold envelope? Rebecca's eyes darkened. You'll see soon. For a moment, silence filled the space. The sound of rain softened, and the reflection of city lights shimmered on the table between them, 2 warriors planning in the shadows. Samuel closed the folder and looked directly at her. You're not after revenge, are you? Rebecca shook her head. No, I'm after justice. He nodded, sliding the documents back into his briefcase. Then we'll do this right by the law, by the truth. As he rose to leave, Rebecca's phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. Dinner tomorrow. Family only. Be ready. Grant. Her heart stilled. The family gathering was happening again too, soon, too perfectly timed. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket, her calm mask unshaken. Rebecca whispered to herself, if he wants another dinner, he'll get one, just not the one he expects. And when that night came, every lie he built would be served back to him at his own table. The bright clinic lights glared like judgment. Ariel Monroe sat nervously in the waiting area of Cedar Falls Medical Center, her hand resting over her pregnant belly. She was dressed neatly in a soft pink fitted dress, her face painted in calm confidence, but her fingers kept tapping the armrest. Today wasn't just another checkup. It was proof of a future she believed belonged to her. Behind the counter, the nurse smiled. Miss Monroe, we just need one more sample for the file. She nodded, unaware that someone else was in the same building. Rebecca Carver, standing quietly near the back corridor in a long coat, her expression hidden but her eyes sharp. Intensity spiked. The camera lingered on both women, one believing she had won, the other preparing to end the game. When Samuel Price, Rebecca's lawyer, had first mentioned the idea of verification, Rebecca had resisted. But when Henry Miles, the private investigator, handed her photos of Ariel meeting investors at the same time, Grant claimed to be working late, she knew. She needed evidence, not emotion. And so, this visit wasn't a coincidence. It was strategy. Rebecca watched as the nurse carried Ariel's sealed sample envelope toward the lab window. She moved closer, her voice low but firm. Excuse me, could you help me deliver a file to Dr. Harris? It's urgent. She handed over an identical envelope, one she'd prepared earlier, labeled with Ariel's name. The nurse nodded without suspicion. Of course. The switch happened in one smooth moment no one noticed. As the nurse disappeared, Rebecca's hands trembled for the first time that day. She exhaled softly, whispering, Patience, Rebecca. Stillness is strength. Truth doesn't shout. It waits, watches, and arrives with precision and patience. Outside, thunder rolled over Cedar Falls. Rebecca stepped out of the clinic and into the rain, each drop washing away a piece of her hesitation. The test results would come soon, the proof that would shatter his carefully constructed life. Later that night, the results arrived in a discreet envelope at her doorstep, marked confidential. Inside, under clear medical formatting, it read, Paternity result, excluded, 0% match. Her hand covered her mouth, not from surprise but from validation. Every instinct had been right. The unborn child wasn't Grant's. She sat at her long oak table, staring at the paper under the chandelier's glow. Tears welled but didn't fall. She whispered, So that's why you were never afraid. You didn't even need to be careful. Evelyn Pierce entered quietly, setting down 2 mugs of tea. You have what you need now, she said softly. Rebecca nodded. Almost, but timing matters. The next dinner will do the talking. Evelyn's brow furrowed. You're really going? Rebecca looked up, her calm smile hiding fire. He called it a family dinner. Let's make sure it becomes a reckoning. Lightning flashed through the window, catching the reflection of the white envelope she now tucked beside the golden one. 2 weapons. 2 truths. Rebecca whispered to herself as the storm raged outside. At the next dinner, silence will end, and justice will sit at the head of the table. The sound of laughter echoed through Carver Realty's glass halls, forced a hollow laughter. Cameras flashed as reporters surrounded Grant Carver and Ariel Monroe at a press event. A large banner hung behind them. Carver Expansion, Building the Future. Grant, in his crisp navy suit, smiled for the cameras, hand resting proudly on Ariel's pregnant belly. But behind every flash of light was a shadow. The polished empire he flaunted was rotten beneath the surface, and somewhere across Cedar Falls, a quiet storm was gathering. Intensity filled the air. Grant shook hands with Mayor Judith Lang, promising progress and partnership. His voice carried charm, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. Here's to family, he said into the microphone, and to new beginnings. The crowd applauded. But Harold Carver, his father, stood at the back of the room, face stone cold. When the cameras turned away, Harold stepped forward. You think this spectacle hides your sins? He whispered. Grant smirked, refusing to look at him. You taught me to smile through everything, Father. I learned from the best. Harold's voice dropped. You've betrayed not just your wife, but the Carver legacy. Remember, every empire built on lies collapses. Grant's jaw tightened. I'm not collapsing, I'm evolving. The scene cut sharply to Rebecca Carver, standing by her study window. Outside, the same speech played on the TV. Grant's confident smile filled the screen. His voice, calm and convincing, spoke of unity, but she saw the cracks, the illusion, the deception, the arrogance. Evelyn Pierce, her accountant friend, entered quietly, holding a file. The auditors found it, she said. The missing transfers, the ones tied to the shell companies. He's moving money through Ariel's sister's firm, Cynthia Monroe Investments. Rebecca took the file and studied the numbers. Every page was a confession written in ink. He's laundering through family, she murmured. That's how he kept the accounts hidden. Evelyn's voice trembled. Are you sure you're ready for this dinner? It's risky. Rebecca looked up, her expression calm but unreadable. It's not risk, it's timing. Patience is the sharpest weapon. She turned toward the oak cabinet, opening it to reveal the 2 envelopes, one white and one gold. The white envelope held the financial evidence. The gold one, the DNA proof. She slid both into her handbag with deliberate precision. Henry Miles, the private investigator, entered next. Press will be there tomorrow, he reported. You said to invite them discreetly? Rebecca nodded. Quietly enough to look like coincidence. Loud enough for the truth to echo. Henry hesitated, then smiled faintly. You're good, Mrs. Carver. Too good. Rebecca's gaze stayed fixed on the screen, where Grant kissed Ariel's hand for the cameras. No, she said softly. I'm just done pretending. Every storm has an eye, and in that stillness before impact, silence feels like peace. But peace was never her goal, it was justice. As the night deepened, Rebecca rehearsed her composure. Every movement was calm, every breath deliberate. Tomorrow's dinner would be a reckoning disguised as celebration. Rebecca placed her phone on the table, the screen glowing with Grant's text. Family dinner, 7 p.m. Don't be late. She smiled faintly and whispered, I won't, but you'll wish I had been. Asterisk. The Carver mansion glowed like a palace under the evening sky. Cars lined the driveway, and camera flashes flickered from the gates. Tonight was the family gathering. Everyone in Cedar Falls had been talking about a celebration of unity and legacy. But inside the mansion, unity was a mask, and legacy was about to burn. The long oak table gleamed under the chandelier's glow, set with gold-trimmed plates, crystal glasses clinked, and laughter that sounded forced. Grant Carver, dressed in an impeccable black suit, moved through the crowd like a man reborn. To the world, he looked like victory in human form, a man of influence, a devoted husband who had forgiven his past mistakes. At his side stood Ariel Monroe, radiant and proud, her pregnant belly framed by a silver-fitted dress. She smiled for the reporters, playing her part perfectly. The intensity hit when Harold Carver arrived. The patriarch's entrance was like thunder. The laughter stopped. His voice cut through the noise. Let's see if family still means the same thing it used to. Grant's jaw tightened, but his charm returned in seconds. Of course, Father. Tonight is about family and about a new beginning. At the far end of the table, Rebecca Carver entered quietly. She wore a simple black gown, elegant and modest. The guest turned, whispering. She didn't flinch. Her calm composure stood out more than any diamond in the room. Every stage has its lead actor, but tonight the quiet one held the script that would end the show. Rebecca took her seat. She smiled at the guests, then at Grant. You wanted me here, she said softly. So, here I am. The dinner began. Waiters moved elegantly. The air filled with perfume and pretense. Glasses clinked, and the chandelier's glow shimmered over perfectly placed smiles. But beneath the surface, eyes watched. Hearts raced. Evelyn Pierce and Dr. Samuel Price, seated near the back, exchanged glances. They knew what was coming. Hidden among the guests, Henry Miles, the private investigator, filmed quietly with a button camera. Every second was being documented. Grant cleared his throat, raising his glass. To family, he began, his tone smooth. To the future, and to forgiveness. A polite cheer followed. Cameras flashed. Then, from across the table, Rebecca's voice came soft but steady. Forgiveness, she repeated, her tone sharp as glass. An interesting word, coming from a man who built forgiveness on deception, greed, and betrayal. A ripple of whispers moved across the room. Ariel's hand froze midair, her smile faltering. Grant tried to laugh. Rebecca, let's not. But she didn't stop. Her voice stayed calm, her words precise. You said this night was about family, Grant. I agree. So let's talk about it truthfully this time. The camera zoomed in on her face. Calm, confident, unshakable. Harold leaned forward, his eyes burning. Rebecca, what are you saying? Rebecca looked at him, then at Grant, and smiled faintly. I'm saying the truth deserves a seat at this table. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every heartbeat seemed to echo under the chandelier's glow. As Rebecca reached for her handbag under the table, her fingers brushed against two envelopes, one white, one gold. And by the time the second one opened, the Carver name would never sound the same again. The room went silent the moment Rebecca Carver rose from her seat. Her calm, steady presence cut through the noise like a blade. The faint hum of the chandelier's glow above flickered across her face, half light, half shadow. Every eye turned toward her, the loyal Carver family, the curious guests, the press, and of course, Grant Carver, the man who thought he still controlled the room. Intensity surged. Rebecca's soft voice carried further than any shout. Since tonight is about family, she said, I'd like to share something too. The glasses clinked, but no one drank. Even Ariel Monroe, her face pale despite her flawless fitted dress, turned in confusion. Grant tried to laugh, but it sounded strained. Rebecca, please, not tonight. Rebecca looked straight at him. You asked me here, Grant. You wanted family at your table. Well, I brought it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a white envelope. It was pristine, heavy, and sealed its mere presence enough to make the air shift. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon at a family dinner isn't a scream, it's paper. Harold Carver, his stern face drawn with tension, leaned forward. What's in that envelope? Rebecca opened it carefully, unfolding the first page divorce papers already signed. The audience gasped. Murmurs spread. Grant's image of a perfect husband began to crumble before everyone. Grant forced a grin. You can't just walk away. The prenup protects me. Rebecca met his eyes with calm precision. You're right, Grant. It did. Until you violated it. The words hit like lightning. She slid another sheet across the table, bank statements, receipts, and shell company transfers. These, she continued, prove you used joint funds to fuel your secret empire and to support her. She nodded toward Ariel, whose trembling hands clutched her glass. Evelyn Pierce, seated near the back, exchanged a look with Dr. Samuel Price, the attorney. Samuel stood slowly and placed a file on the table. Every fraudulent real estate transfer, every undisclosed account, every shady investor documented, verified, notarized. Gasps filled the air again. The polished empire was rotten beneath the surface. Grant's charm faltered. His voice rose. You have no idea what you're talking about. But his father, Harold, spoke before Rebecca could. I warned you. You betrayed your family, your name, and your wife. Grant's face hardened. You're all turning on me? Rebecca's tone softened, but her words cut deep. No, Grant. You turned on yourself. Cameras flashed as reporters whispered, their curiosity feeding on his panic. Ariel's face went pale. Tears gathered in her eyes. The storm she'd built with patience was finally beginning to break. Rebecca placed the open envelope flat on the table. This was the first truth, she said softly. But there's another. The air thickened. Guests leaned forward, sensing something bigger waiting beneath her calm exterior. Grant's mask slipped completely, his breathing uneven, his voice cracking. What are you talking about? He whispered. Rebecca's eyes didn't leave his. You'll see soon. Rebecca touched the gold envelope, still resting in her bag. Her fingers lingered on it like a silent promise. The next truth wouldn't just ruin him. It would erase everything he believed was his. The sound of the white envelope hitting the long oak table still echoed when Rebecca reached back into her handbag. Her calm fingers brushed the edge of a second envelope, this one gold, sealed like something sacred. The entire Carver family froze. Even the chandelier's glow seemed to dim, as though the house itself held its breath. Intensity exploded. Grant's voice cracked through the silence. What is that? Rebecca looked at him, her face serene, her tone steady. It's the second truth, the one you'll wish I never opened. Ariel Monroe, seated beside him, paled. Her hand moved protectively over her pregnant belly, but guilt was already written across her face. Harold Carver stood, his cane trembling slightly in his grip. Rebecca, what are you doing? She didn't answer. She simply tore open the gold envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Some weapons are made of steel, others are made of silence, patience, and proof. Rebecca lifted the paper. This, she said, is a DNA test. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Grant blinked, confused. DNA test? What are you? Rebecca laid it flat on the table so the guests could see the bold letters across the top. Paternity result. Excluded. 0% match. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then chaos. Ariel's glass shattered, falling from her trembling hand. Grant's face drained of color, eyes wide, disbelief etched deep. Harold's voice broke like thunder. Good Lord, that child isn't yours? Rebecca's voice stayed quiet, almost gentle. No, Harold, it isn't. She turned back to Grant. You built your betrayal around a lie so large, even you couldn't control it. The child you paraded as your legacy was never yours. Grant shook his head, stammering. That's impossible. You forged this. You're trying to destroy me. Rebecca tilted her head. Destroy you? No, Grant. You did that yourself. I just made sure the world sees it. Evelyn Pierce, calm and meticulous, rose from her seat at the back. The test was conducted by the clinic where Ariel was treated, she said. Witnessed, sealed, and delivered by a notary. Every step documented. Reporters gasped. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like fire. The image of a perfect husband was dead, replaced by the spectacle of a man cornered by his own deceit. Grant lunged across the table, slamming his hands down inches from Rebecca's face. You planned this. Rebecca didn't flinch. No, Grant, I prepared for it. He froze. Something in her eyes, the power hidden behind quiet strength, made him step back. Every lie leaves a receipt, every deception, a paper trail. And tonight, all of them led here. Ariel wept quietly, head bowed, as Harold sank into his chair, covering his face. You've disgraced us all, he whispered. Grant looked around the room at his family, his colleagues, the flashing cameras, and realized the truth. He was no longer in control. Rebecca slowly gathered the papers and slid them back into her bag. You called this dinner a new beginning, she said softly. You were right. It is. Rebecca turned toward the stunned guests, her voice a whisper but her words sharp. The night isn't over yet. Justice hasn't spoken, but it will. The sound of Grant's shattered pride filled the room louder than the broken glass on the long oak table. His chest rose and fell, his voice cracking as reporters' cameras flashed like lightning. The chandelier's glow trembled across his pale face, revealing not power but fear. Intensity burned. Turn those cameras off! Grant shouted, his hand trembling as he pointed at the press. This dinner is private, but no one moved. The moment had escaped his control. The Carver family name, once the emblem of wealth, respect, and legacy, was unraveling in real time. Harold Carver stood, his aging hands gripping the chair. "You brought this on yourself," he said, his voice trembling with disappointment. "You've tainted the Carver bloodline for greed, deception, and disgrace." Grant's lips quivered. "Father, don't call me that," Harold snapped. "You betrayed your wife, your family, and this city." Across the table, Ariel Monroe wept quietly, her mascara running in dark rivers down her cheeks. Her fitted silver dress now looked like armor cracking under shame. "I didn't know, Grant," she whispered, voice shaking. "You told me it was love." Rebecca sat in silence, her composure intact. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. Her calm made the chaos louder. The quietest person in the room often carries the loudest truth. Tonight, that truth had finally found its voice. Evelyn Pierce slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains your entire trail," she said firmly. "Every fraudulent real estate transfer, every undisclosed bank account, every meeting tied to your shell companies. The evidence has already been delivered to the Financial Crimes Division." Grant froze. "You... what?" Dr. Samuel Price, her lawyer, stepped forward from the corner. "The law doesn't sleep, Mr. Carver. It simply waits for the right evidence. And your wife provided it with patience, precision, and documentation." Grant's breathing quickened. "You can't do this. I built this empire." Rebecca finally spoke. "No," she said softly. "You stole it." The crowd gasped. Whispers spread through the guests like wildfire. Deception, greed, betrayal. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Others streamed the chaos live. Grant looked around, desperate. His board members avoided his gaze. His allies had turned to stone. Even Mayor Judith Lang, once his biggest political supporter, slipped quietly out the side door. Then came the final blow. Henry Miles, the private investigator, stepped from the crowd. "You didn't just steal money," he said coldly. "You borrowed millions from dangerous lenders, people who don't forgive." Grant staggered back, realization hitting him like a storm. The world he built on lies was collapsing, the polished empire rotten beneath the surface. He had promised wealth, power, and legacy, but in chasing illusion, he forfeited everything real. Rebecca rose slowly. Her tone remained calm. "You once told me I was too quiet to matter, but silence isn't weakness, it's strategy." Grant looked at her, trembling. "Rebecca, what are you going to do?" She turned toward him, her face illuminated by the trembling light. "Exactly what you taught me," she said. "I'm going to finish what you started, only this time, with truth." Rebecca glanced at Samuel, her attorney. "Tomorrow morning," she whispered, "we take this from the table to the courtroom." And when the gavel fell, the name Carver would never rise again. The gavel struck once, sharp, loud, final. The echo filled the grand courtroom, drowning out whispers and camera clicks. At the defendant's table sat Grant Carver, once a man of influence, now pale, restless, eyes darting between his lawyer and the woman he had underestimated. Across the aisle, Rebecca Carver sat calm, hands folded, her face framed by quiet dignity. The light from the high windows fell over her like justice itself. Intensity roared. The judge's voice was firm. "This court convenes to address the charges of fraud, money laundering, and concealment of marital assets in the matter of Carver Realty versus Rebecca Carver." Dr. Samuel Price, Rebecca's attorney, stood tall. "Your Honor, we submit irrefutable evidence of fraudulent real estate transfers, shell companies, and undisclosed accounts, all orchestrated by the defendant to defraud both investors and his spouse." He clicked a remote. On the large screen appeared images, Grant's signature on doctored contracts, spreadsheets of overseas transactions, and wire transfers to Cynthia Monroe Investments, Ariel's sister's firm. The audience gasped. Grant's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "Sit down, Mr. Collins. The documentation is clear." Evelyn Pierce, sitting behind Rebecca, watched the display unfold, months of investigation finally finding their voice. The private investigator, Henry Miles, nodded from the gallery. Every photo, every timestamp had come from his careful shadowing. He thought deception could rewrite truth, but the truth had been watching, waiting, collecting receipts. Grant slammed his hands on the table. She set me up. She planned this. Rebecca's calm voice sliced through the air. No, Grant. You set yourself up when you forgot that integrity was worth more than illusion. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Carver, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your empire is rotten beneath the surface, built on greed, deceit, and arrogance. A hush fell. The Carver family name, once untouchable, was now being written into court records as a symbol of betrayal and downfall. Grant's father, Harold Carver, sat in the front row, face hard as stone. He whispered under his breath, "You destroyed everything your grandfather built." A tear escaped Rebecca's eye, not from sadness, but from release. For the first time, she felt the weight lifting. Judge Rowan Hale, known across Cedar Falls for his integrity, looked at Rebecca. "Mrs. Carver, this court recognizes your role in uncovering the crimes. Your testimony and documentation were crucial. The court hereby grants full ownership of all verified assets, real estate, trusts, and family inheritance to you." The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting, flashes blinding. Grant collapsed into his seat, whispering, "This can't be happening." Rebecca stood slowly. Her voice was calm, steady. "Every lie has its receipt, Grant, and justice keeps them all." The judge's gavel struck again. This court finds the defendant guilty. The empire had fallen not with an explosion, but with the quiet power of truth. Grant was led away in handcuffs, head down, cameras flashing. Rebecca exhaled, hands trembling slightly. Evelyn touched her shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. Rebecca looked toward the window where sunlight streamed through. "No," she said softly. "It's beginning." As the reporters swarmed outside, Rebecca glanced at the crowd and whispered, "Tomorrow, they'll know what freedom looks like." The courthouse doors burst open to chaos. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed, and the word guilty echoed through Cedar Falls like thunder. Grant Carver, once a man of influence, was led away in handcuffs. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his name now synonymous with betrayal, deception, and downfall. Intensity struck. As he stumbled down the marble steps, he caught sight of Rebecca Carver standing still at the bottom, calm, dignified, unshaken. She wasn't dressed for revenge but for closure. Her black coat flapped in the wind, the same calm grace she carried the night she pulled out those papers that shattered his carefully constructed life. "Rebecca, wait!" Grant's voice cracked through the noise. He pushed against the guards, desperation breaking what little pride he had left. "Please, I made mistakes, but I loved you once. Don't let it end like this." Rebecca turned, her gaze soft but unreadable. "It ended the night you introduced her," she said quietly. "What happens now is just justice catching up." The guards pulled him back, but he kept talking. "I lost everything. Please, I have nothing left." Rebecca took a slow breath. "You still have truth," she said. "Start there." He looked at her as though she'd spoken a foreign language. The mask of success he'd once worn was gone. All that remained was a broken man. He chased power, but she chose peace. And in the end, power crumbled while peace rebuilt. Hours later, the city quieted. Rebecca sat alone in her home, the same home he once ruled with arrogance. Now, it belonged entirely to her. The long oak table was polished and bare, the chandelier's glow warm instead of cold. In front of her lay a single folder marked closure. Inside were new deeds, new bank accounts, and one final document, a donation transfer. Every asset she'd reclaimed from the wreckage was now funding a foundation for women seeking justice and freedom. Evelyn Pierce entered, carrying tea. "You really gave it all away?" she asked softly. Rebecca smiled faintly. "It was never about money, Evelyn. It was about freedom." Evelyn nodded. "You've rewritten your future." Rebecca leaned back, eyes distant. "No," she said. "I just stopped letting someone else write it for me." The story began with humiliation, but ended with redemption. The quietest voice had become the loudest truth. A knock echoed at the door. Delia, the loyal maid, opened it, and there stood Grant. No guards, no arrogance, just a man stripped bare. Rain clung to his face like tears. "Rebecca," he whispered, kneeling at the threshold. "Please, forgive me. I'm begging you." She didn't move. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "Forgiveness isn't mine to give, Grant. You'll have to earn it from the life you broke. He lowered his head, defeated. Rebecca turned back toward her glowing table, where the foundation documents waited. Goodbye, Grant, she said. The world finally knows who you are and who I've become. As he disappeared into the rain, the chandelier's light reflected on the signed papers. Justice had spoken, but freedom had just begun.